Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Thursday night news show. And in this video we're going to talk all about Daniel Farke's press conference, what he talked about today. So a few main issues that I want to get into. Obviously the conversation this week has all been around Leeds United and conceding late goals. And Daniel Farke was posed this question today in his press conference and did answer. So I want to talk all about that and actually look some other reasons why Leeds United are conceding so many goals. I know we talked about it a bit earlier in the week, but I've actually had a bit of a think about it this week and I've seen a few stats that I want to bring to you guys, which I think you'll quite enjoy. So we'll talk about that. And I also want to talk about the injury situation as well at Leeds United because the news is looking pretty good. Pretty good. Obviously, we've got a massive game on Tuesday night as well against Sunderland. But first of all, we have got the Man City game, which is obviously what this press conference was all about. Important to know as well, we'll have the match preview tomorrow as well at 8 p.m. So definitely join for that. I always really enjoy the Friday night shows, as you guys do, and you guys usually enjoy the Friday night show too. Anyway, let's start with Daniel Farke and his press conference. But before we get into that, of course, you can help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. We are growing towards 2,000 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer day by day, and what we're now 67 away. So if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff massively helps the channel. But yeah, let's start with the main sort of question of today, really. And this is around these late goals. And basically, Daniel Farke was asked, just truthfully, why Leeds United conceding too many late goals? And his response was, there is never one reason. We have to go over the line with our output, especially in the lead. Maturity comes with time and dealing with these situations. We have also won points late on. And obviously, one of the points won late on is that Liverpool game when we were 3-1 down in the game. Or 3-2 down in the game, and Tanaka came up with a 95th minute equaliser. So he's right, Leeds United have picked up points, but I think for the most part, it's Leeds United dropping points that's naturally been the issue, and we have dropped a lot more than we've gained. And one of the things I was thinking about, we've obviously talked the other day about the fact that maybe subs are not done quick enough. We've talked about maybe the squad isn't quite good enough. We've talked about squad quality because you've been promoted. All that naturally features in this conversation. But one thing I don't think we featured in this conversation, which I think is paramount to this conversation, is workload. And Daniel Farke comes to workload in this when he says, we've got to go over the line with our output. And this is actually the truth. And if you look at sort of Leeds United's running stats this season, this is a huge issue. We run more than any other team in the Premier League in terms of distance covered. And actually, one of the worst problems actually with this three back that we're playing at this moment in time is the lack of wingers. So currently, we're obviously playing with sort of Bogle and Goodmanson, who have enormous amount of sort of stuff to get through because they've got to get up and down each wing without any real support, whereas most teams that play, say, 4-3-3, which most teams do, would have a winger and a left back covering the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side they'd have a winger and a right back. Well, we don't have that because we don't play with wingers because we're sort of playing a two up front a lot of the time, which means that Bogle and Goodmanson have to go through an awful amount of workload. And then the problem becomes amplified when you look at the midfield situation, because most midfields naturally play three in midfield, whereas Leeds United at this moment in time, yes, they play three in midfield, but we don't play with wingers again. So what does that mean? Well, it means that your fullbacks or your midfielders have to get out to stop their wingbacks, and again, that naturally fullbacks, so that naturally increases workload, and you see that, as I said, in the running stats, because Leeds United run more than anyone in this division, and for me that is fundamentally down to the conversation, because if you look at it like a game, Leeds United are playing with 5 defenders and then 5 other players on the pitch, whereas most teams are playing with 4 defenders and then 6 other players. So Leeds United, because we're playing with an extra defender in comparison to most other teams, we're naturally going to be outnumbered in the remaining positions, naturally. But what that means is Leeds United have constantly got to make up ground to allow us to play with that extra defender. And it means that the workload of the midfield, the forward line and the fullbacks is just ridiculous because it allows us to have that extra centre-back. And that is the price you pay. Now, I still think we should stick with this 5-back. That isn't a problem. However, that is something for me that is causing these late goals to concede, that we are conceding for me. I think that it is workload. And Gibson White rightly said in the comments there, even Scott, fatigue, both physically and mentally. And the mental side is a different situation, because obviously the physical side is a problem like we've just discussed, but the mental side is a problem as well, because especially when we've been holding on to Leeds. And I think one of the problems we've had with Leeds United a few times this season is we've just gone too deep too quickly. And what that means is the defence have so much work to do in the head constantly, and they just don't get a break from defending after defending after defending. And this has been even situations when we've won games, when you look at the sort of West Ham game. Like the West Ham game, truthfully, we were good for half an hour. This is the home game. Well, we haven't played it yet. But in the home game against West Ham, for half an hour, we were fantastic. Scored 2 goals. Obviously, Aronson scored early on. Rodon added the second. But actually, since after that point, West Ham brought a few players on. I think Mateus Fernandes actually came on in the game. I can't remember who else came on as well, but another player came on as well. And it made a real impact to West Ham. And basically, for the last for the whole second half, we were kind of camped in and soaking pressure up. Now, that's all good, but you've got to have an out ball, and you've got to find a way of winning fouls just to take a bit of pressure off the defence. Because if you don't do, as Gibson White rightly said, you do get physical fatigue. And you do, when you've got to head out so many crosses, eventually, by the law of averages, one is going to go slightly wrong. And you look at some of the goals we've conceded, if you use Villa as a sort of broad example in the most recent game, Rodon obviously switches off, doesn't he? And he misses his header and gets bullied by Konsa. But would that have happened had Rodon not had to do as many clearances in the game because Leeds United didn't have to defend so deep? Would that have actually occurred, that situation in the first place? I think that's where you can question it. And that's something that I think, look, I do believe that Leeds United are going to be okay this season. But this is definitely something that next season, I think the data team will need to look at. Look at how much workload we're going through in games. And look at maybe how we can reduce that, but not just that, how we can make subs at the right times to sort of naturally diminish the problem of fatigue in our players. Because truthfully, what ends up happening is we drop deeper, 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 soak up pressure, then you get the mental fatigue of the defence because they've got to soak up so much pressure, then the goal comes. And that I do think, look, these are all, people go, yeah, they're excuses. This is human biology. This is how humans behave. And you've got to bear that in mind when we talk about these things. So look, as I said, that is a problem for Leeds, and it's something that we need to correct massively. But I still think there's stuff we can do about it, and I still think we're doing a good job to be in these positions in a lot of games in the first place, which I think slightly at time goes unmentioned. And I also don't think, and I've never thought this for a long time, that it's just only solely a case of Daniel Farke not doing changes quick enough. Yes, that maybe it's a problem, but there's other alternative factors that sort of play through that naturally as well. Anyway, let's move on to the injury news as well. We had some fantastic injury news today, in truth. Obviously, we know Noah Okafor's out anyway, and that's kind of how it is. He's going to be back in a few weeks' time, but he obviously did get that injury, as we were aware, against Birmingham. But the main positive is that there's been no more injury news. And actually, even though we've got a few injury-prone players in the team, Calvert-Lewin, Nemecha, we are actually managing this injury problem in a real good way at this moment in time. And it was getting me thinking about something I'd said a few weeks ago. And it's actually something that Nuno's doing. It's similar at West Ham at this moment, where the reason a lot of people on this channel call for Lucas Nemecha to start with Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. The issue with doing that is one of them has to play 90 minutes. Whereas if you constantly leave one on the bench, either you can bring one of them on, or you can go 2 later in game, and it gives you that option. Whereas you start with 2, you can't do that. And I think, obviously, when the Chelsea game, we did start the 2, Nemecha and DCL up there. The main benefit of that was we could bully teams early on, but we didn't offer the sort of the next level, and we had to bring Okafor later in the game. We didn't offer that next level stage of game management, which would have allowed to do. So, look, I can see this is why we need to buy a striker in the summer, because at this moment in time we've got 2 physical strikers who work really well in the system, but we can't play them at the same time because we need one to be a bench option. And I think that's something that Farke naturally is juggling. But it's also probably one of the reasons why we're managing the injury crisis quite well, because we aren't getting a lot of injuries, and that is a real positive, because I do think, especially if we can keep this team fit, I do think we'll be okay. Barry says, hiya, nice to see you, mate. And he also says, I can't see how Man City beat us. Positive, Barry, I must admit, mate. I can see how Man City beat us. The things with Man City is, I felt when Arsenal beat us, they beat us because they matched us on a physical basis, and then they had extra quality in terms of just individual brilliance, to the point where they can just beat us in terms of individual quality, and when they've matched the physicality, we can't then bully them on a physical basis. Man City's a bit differently. Man City are better technically, in my opinion, on the ball. I think they've got people like Bernardo Silva, Cherkis, Fodens, etc. All fantastic footballers. But I do think this season, more than other seasons, you actually can get a Man City. And I do think this is a game that actually maybe stylistically suits us a bit more than Arsenal, because even though they've got a high level of quality, Man City, we can maybe, quote-unquote, beat them up in the game and use our physical presence and dominate on set pieces, dominate high balls, long balls, etc., and dominate in that phase of the game. But look, Man City is going to be a mammoth task, and we will talk about that obviously tomorrow in full detail, but it will be a mammoth task, and it will be everybody's going to have a good game. They're going to have an off game. That's the sort of situation of the game's going to be to allow Leeds United to get a result in the game. They're going to have to make mistakes. Probably Haaland's going to have an off day as well. Obviously, he's just better than Calvert-Lewin according to Daniel Farke as well. But look, and that's going to be the situation of the game. But that's truthfully, that's the situation a lot of the games. Like even when we beat Chelsea, people won't like this tape, but even when we beat Chelsea at home, it required Chelsea having an off day. They were bad that day. I mean, they gave us a goal. They didn't mark up be all on a set piece early on, which cost them a goal as well. They made mistakes in the game, and it's going to take something like Man City to do something like that again. And I think, but I do think this Man City team, more than Man City teams in previous years, are a team that we can get at. And I do think, look, we know Leeds United are brilliant under lights at Ellen Road. We do know there'll be a fantastic atmosphere because, truthfully, I think a lot of people think if we can win the next two, which is a big ask, but if we could win the next two, we're probably home and dry then, especially with the games we've got coming up as well. And I do think there's an opportunity to do that. 2 night games at Leeds United. We haven't lost a night game for obviously nearly 3 years now. So look, there's a lot of reasons why this game could be beneficial to Leeds United. And as I said, I do think stylistically it's probably a better matchup, but it is going to require City after off game, because there is a situation where City pop it round us and they just beat us fair and square, and they beat us from sort of raw individual quality, and we just can't get near them. Almost like when the Barcelona team that Pep managed, where they had Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets in there, where although you could maybe beat them on a physical basis, you just couldn't get near them. And I think that's probably the step up that we're at this moment in time. Not that Man City are as good as that team, but in terms of the way they're trying to play, that's what they could do to us. It really is. What lineup would you go for against City? I'm thinking of 4 at the back and 5 in midfield. I'm not thinking that, mate. I don't think we should change from the 5 back at all this season. I think we've got a system that works now, and I think we should stick to the system that works. So off the top of my head, you're looking at, for me, Darlow in goal, Bogle right wing back. I would go Justin right centre-back. I would go Biol middle centre-back. I would go Struijk left centre-back. So no Rodon, because he didn't make that mistake right at the end. And I think Justin's been arguably better than Rodon. So that would be a system there. I would go Goodmanson left wing-back, who gladly is back from his illness, which is good news. Ampadu, Stack, and Gruev in the midfield 3. Potentially Longstaff, but I think I would stick with Gruev just. And then I would go with Aronson just behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and that would be my team. Is that the same team that we picked against Villa outside of Biol? It is, yeah. So the only change I'd make from the last game is that I would basically put in Biol instead of Rodon. That would be my team, because I think we've got to be aware of what they can do. So I do think we need them 3 midfield sort of holding midfielders. I think Stack obviously can be the progressive one in that midfield, but we do need that extra body in there. I don't think it's a game to go 2 up front with Aronson in the midfield, in my opinion. That's what I would do. Fair enough, but isn't Bogle suspended? He has suspender. He has 5 midfielders. Fair enough, but isn't Bogle suspender? He has 5. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Matt, if I'm being totally honest. Bogle, in terms of he drops into a midfield 5, in terms of midfield, I'm not fully sure. But yeah, look, the Man City game is going to be a challenge, but of course it is. And as I said, truthfully, you'll take a point all day, because that would mean we've got 3 points in these last 3 games, which will be a mega return. You'd have probably taken maybe 2, even maybe 1 going into these fixtures. So look, anything on Saturday will be a fantastic achievement for Leeds United. But I do think, as I said, stylistically, it's something that does favour Leeds. And stylistically, I do think it's a game that we can get points in. But as I said, the match preview will obviously be tomorrow, and we'll talk all in much more detail. I've got quite a few stats that I want to bring to you in that game as well. But other than that, it's gonna be a shorter show today, people. But thanks all for watching. As always, I will catch you tomorrow at 8 PM again, so definitely hang around for that. It's usually, as I always say, it's a bit more relaxed show on a Friday night. I think everyone's finished work, everyone's a bit more calm. It's just a nice place to be. I always think the Leeds Lens channel on a Friday. It is my favourite show of the week as well, so definitely join for that. But other than that, I shall see you all tomorrow. Thanks for watching as always, and as I said, if you could drop a like, subscribe, all that that good stuff does massively, massively help the channel. No, sorry, I thought Bogle was suspending because of yellow cards. No, he's not, mate. He's not. Anyway, as I said, thanks all for watching, and I will see you later, everybody. Bye for now.